Hi, this is Scott Schrader, and I would like to talk to you about Parashah VaY'Hi today, at least a particular section of it. We find that in Genesis 48, verses 17 through 22. And here we have Jacob uh, at the end of his life. He's on his sick bed, and he sits up, and Joseph brings his two sons to him, Ephraim and Manasseh. He brings them to him for the blessing. Now, Manasseh is the oldest, and so he directs him because Jacob is kind of blind to pray to give the firstborn blessing to Manasseh. But Jacob switches his hands and he blesses. He gives Ephraim the firstborn blessing. Ephraim means fruitful or double portion, and so he's kind of fulfilling his namesake that it was a prophetic name that he had to begin with. And when he prophesies over Ephraim, and I'd like to direct you to this, in verse 19, he says that Ephraim will fill the nations. Now, there have been some interesting comments on this over time in the Hebrew world. It didn't happen for Ephraim because when we look at how many people he had while he was in Israel, it didn't really increase more than Manasseh. But what it is actually, if you really look at it, it's a prophecy that Ephraim is going to go to the nations, that he is going to be exiled to the nations, which happened. And then he's going to fill the nations. And this word fill is a very interesting word. It's mellow, or mela. And we look at it, we see there's three letters here. The first one is the mem. The mem has to do with birthing, or it's water, blood, water and blood. And so, we have water and blood in birth, and it is associated with birthing. The womb, but even more than that, the actual birth it has to do with. And then secondly, we have the lamed. The lamed has to do with shepherding, or in the early symbol means to control the flow of irrigation, just like a shepherd controls his flock with his staff. So it has the idea of control in there, and this is the central axis. It has to do with controlling. And next we have the aleph, and it has to do with being the servant leader or the carrier. So the idea of filling has a lot to do with control. It's taking over the control. It's filling that place and dominating that place. And we see that Ephraim was taken away by Assyria and now fills the nations. And that's what the belief is, that they fill the nations. And so this prophecy has been fulfilled. Ephraim is everywhere. In fact, the Hebrew roots movement has kind of been based on this, that the 10 tribes represented by Joseph, or Ephraim, are in the nations and they're going to come back. But they look like the Gentiles. They don't look like Jews. They look just like Gentiles. And so they're everywhere, permeating the earth, and they control it. And so I believe you look out there at those who are very wealthy or those who have a lot of control matters, a lot of them are from the tribe of Ephraim. This is what God prophesied. This is what God has given them in their blessing. He gave Judah the blessing of the kingship. He gave Ephraim and Manasseh, or Joseph, the blessing of prosperity and control. So Joseph, interesting enough, he was with Jacob 17 years before he was taken away to Egypt. And then at the end of his life, Jacob was with Joseph in Egypt for 17 years. And so Ephraim, he was with Jacob, depending on how you calculate it, somewhere around 523 years before he was taken away, or the 10 tribes were taken away. Israel will live in the world with Ephraim. We've seen that happen, right? The Jews were dispersed everywhere in the world for a time, and then we'll come back to Israel. And that's already happened. Now, Jacob has is coming back to Israel. So Jacob has been immersed with Ephraim as well, just like Jacob came back and was with Joseph in Egypt. So this is a sign of the end of the week, so to say, in the Hebrew calendar. An age is a week, and there's 6 days in the week, and then comes the Sabbath. The Sabbath is approaching of this age. The Lord of the Sabbath, Yeshua, He said he was the Lord of the Sabbath. He will bring in the Sabbath, the Messiah. He brings in the Sabbath. And so this shows us, again, it's another sign that his coming draws near. And so the question is for us this week is, how do we live in light of his coming drawing near?